This is Ramanuj Mukherjee from LawSikho. I welcome everybody whoever joined us. The discussion is definitely very interesting. We are going to talk about poll law tricks. Okay, I'm not sure exactly what do I make of the topic. Of course, we can get a sense, but it's not polar ticks. It is polar tricks. So there, that makes it even more not just ticks but tricks. So it's even more interesting. How to handle politics and law together? Can we have a career in law and politics at the same time? Is there some kind of connection between these uh, two career options, and not necessarily career, or politics and law both are also public service, not just career, but at the same time career as well. So, and what is their connection? This question often arises. I know many people often, when you are asked that why do you want to become a lawyer, sometimes people say that so many of our freedom fighters, so many of our founders of this country have been politicians uh, and lawyers at the same time, right? Lawyers who have shaped uh, the the country that we live in, and definitely even today we see a lot of politicians are lawyers. Like top lawyers very often become politicians and very successful at that. And so many of our members of parliament, so many members of legislative assemblies are politicians. And of course, it's not just holding elected offices, but there are so many other very important role that lawyers play in the politics of the country, from shaping public policy to shaping how the conversations around politics for that matter. And of course, lawyers are often powerful orators, scholars, learned persons. They study polity, they study administration, they study uh, how the political science basically. So it's very interesting, definitely. Uh, there's a lot I am looking forward to learn from this session, and those who of you, and not only the theoretical stuff, right? Like how do lawyers who are in politics, what do they actually do, and how easy or difficult it is. So very interesting topic today, and I'm really excited to be joined by Gagan Gandhi. Gagan is, interestingly, he graduated with statistics and mathematics from a very famous college, St. Stephen's, and after that he studied law and he studied management also, I believe, uh, and after that he became a lawyer. So that's a very unusual combination, and he is the uh, basically the managing partner of Niti Naya Law Offices. And we also have with us Vinay Preet Singh, who is another lawyer with us today, and he's the managing partner of the Chambers and another law firm. And both of us, all three of us today are uh, going to talk a little about politics. I will be mostly learning and asking questions. So let's welcome both of them and learn more. To start with, I would request both the speakers to share about yourselves and tell us more about, to set up a little bit of context for the viewers as to who you are and why are you relevant for this topic. So starting with Gagan, maybe.
Yeah, thanks Ramanujam for giving this opportunity to talk on this interesting topic and a topic in these turbulent times, I would say. And I thank LawSikho for giving me this opportunity. And thanks to all the participants who have taken time out for discussion on this topic. So the journey actually starts from the day I joined law, and there were a lot of issues which I came across in my vicinity and in the faculty. So it started from uh, applications, right to information applications, RTI applications, and then I believe that every lawyer has certain fighting spirit, and that fighting spirit actually for the cause of justice, that actually propels him to actually join politics. So politics becomes a natural uh, outcome of the profession. So it's not that one deliberately chooses it. The instinct, or if you look at the qualities that one needs in the politics, politics, I would call it as you rightly put it, that both of these things are service to the countrymen, and they are not careers. So the
They are
qualities.
definitely careers also, because if not career, then what else do you do? Like both of them are potentially full-time careers. And you have to, make ends meet as well from them, isn't it? So
Right. So if I see commonality between VP and me, I would say both of us did graduation from the same place. Both of us belong to have a political background. Both of us, at some point or the other, have aspirations in politics. Both of us actually run a law firm. So that is why I think both of us are there at this platform to discuss about this topic. So that is all about what I mean by this topic actually, and how one can use the legal skills to advance oneself in the realm of politics.
great. This is very exciting. So VP, why don't you share about
Thank you,
yourself?
Ramanuj. I think first I need to thank you for having me over for this fantastic session and whole lot tricks, as you said. Yes, it is a very intriguing and a very thought-provoking topic, and whoever has thought of this, he should be rewarded because it's a word in itself which says it all. I mean, law and politics can be taken together and they complement each other. For if you enter in one, ultimately you lead to other. So this particular arena, law and politics, is yes, they can be taken together. And in the words of a famous American lawyer, Clarence, lawyers are natural politicians. That is for sure. But just to tell about myself, yes, I'm a practicing lawyer of Supreme Court. And yes, fortunately, I'm a politician as well, which I think you missed to tell the audience. And I'm onto a lot of committees of the Government of India. Ministry of Home is one of them, then Consumer Affairs. And, I'm also part of the Consultative Committee of Food Corporation of India. So yes, I am into politics. I am into the government. I am looking after a lot of policy issues which are pertaining to the committees which I am into. For me, I beg to differ with both of you that politics can never be a career for anyone. Yes, law can be a profession, and law can be, to a certain extent, can be a career. But when it comes to politics for me is a mission. My family, my two generations have been in politics, and my father was a lawyer, and he was into politics. But for my father, for my family, for myself, politics can never be a career, and it will be always a mission to improve things in this country of ours and how to make the lives of the people better. Well, we all know that India has the largest cohort of youth population. So we are about the youngest nation in the world. And so the onus is on us. So everyone is looking at us, that how India is faring, even for this pandemic that is happening. So everyone is looking at India. India mein kya hoga? What will happen in India? So we have a very strong government in place. We have a very strong policy which is taking care of things. So I think when it comes to politics, we need very strong leaders. And how those strong leaders will emerge from the youngsters. So I think just confining to the introduction, I think any good law, now coming to the law, any good law will ensure a better tomorrow. And who has a responsibility to ensure that the laws are made good and they are fully implemented is the policy, is the politics.
Right. So, the question that comes to mind at this point is, uh, if given everything you said, even at the same time, a lot of lawyers have selfish reasons to be involved in politics, because everybody knows that politics brings you closer to power and it gets you offices and it gets you opportunities. So how do you, like, if somebody has that kind of selfish interest, would you say that it is bad or unfair? Because, I think that people have their two things work here. One is that obviously people are interested in advancing their personal benefits. At the same time, that doesn't mean that they are devoid of any moral or any rules or any values. That is also not true, because people do advance their own careers, but at the same time they do contribute to the society as well. And in fact, we live in a more or less a capitalistic society where we believe that people will do their part, and even if you pursue self-interest, all of it adds up to a system which advances the entire system. And like starting with Adam Smith's ideas, and even if we see the country in a way, there are different groups of people with different beliefs, different interests, different creed, and all of them come together and advocate their own for their own communities, advocate for their own region, sometimes advocate for specific causes, advocate certain ideologies, and at the same time all of it comes together, and that's democracy. So would you say that it's like unjustified if somebody have personal interests in mind when they're pursuing politics?
Well, I think if I had to answer, I think we all have seen the famous Hollywood movie wherein there was a dialogue, the Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. But obviously, politics gives you a lot of power. But it is important that we should understand in any profession, I'm not just talking about politics, but just any profession, what really makes you go in that profession? Is it the only power that you're looking after? But that won't be last forever. I am on a committee, or tomorrow if I contest for Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, I'll be there for 5 years. The question will be, within those time frame, what will I do? How much good can I do? So the point is, what we can give our country, what we can do, what we can contribute towards our country, that should be more important. Obviously, politics and being in power has its own lucrative charm. But the bigger picture is different.
Sure. And perhaps what you mean is that those people who have the bigger picture do better in politics. And
let me add on to what VP was saying. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So there are enough checks and balances in the system which takes care of that aspect which you were talking about, that ultimately it should not lead to the self-glorification. So that will be very short-lived. You will not be able to sustain it over the period of time until and unless you see politics as an instrument of change. And there is no harm when you say that you are looking for power. Obviously, if I can only bring change if I have power. Without power, you can't expect me to bring change in the society. But then there are enough checks and balances, since it's a democratic process. So it will take care that if I am digressing from my vision, or if I'm digressing from the path, then the system will throw me out. There are enough. I would say democracy, despite all, is the best form of governance. So no matter
the best we know about.
Yes, that's the best form of governance till date we know about, and it's a time-tested mechanism which we have arrived at.
Right.
And precisely, the wrong people getting into politics, and they are defaming the entire political system. For a common man, if you ask him what is the definition of politics, he'll have a separate definition. I mean, for all the
same thing for lawyers, for that matter.
That's what I'm saying. For all the think tanks, for a lot of think tanks, they'll say that word politics comes from a Greek word called politica, and they'll quote Aristotle. But if you'll ask common man, he won't be able to quote Aristotle. But for him, and I'll tell you what will be the definition for him, he'll break the word, as you've done 4 law tricks, he'll break the word politics into 2, poly and tix. And poly and tix in Latin means many bloodsuckers. For a common man of this country, politicians are many is a collection of bloodsuckers. They are good for nothing, and they are just on the people. They are parasites. I'm sorry, this is a stark fact. And precisely why I am into politics. Let me just answer you this. I don't know whether you'll be asking me or not, but I'll be telling you why I'm in politics, why I've chose law and politics as a career, not for money, not for power, but the sheer thrill of solving problems. And that is the reason I'm in politics. And that is the reason I've chosen law as my career.
Wonderful.
Because it gives me satisfaction.
Right.
Actually, when I was going through this subject matter, I came across that why good lawyers make good politicians. So I hope you will be addressing that also during the discussion.
Yeah,
But
exactly. That is the next question I was coming to. I also wanted to ask you before that, why are there so many lawyers in politics? Because if you look at it this way, there are not as many doctors or engineers or architects, right? Why so many lawyers in politics?
yeah, because if you look at the qualities which you need to address the demands of administration, you will find that all majority of that qualities are being met by the lawyers. But then in politics, there is no for entrance examination. Anybody from any walk of life can join politics. That has to be looked upon. The reason is, as BP was saying, because of the problem solving nature. So if you can convert any problem, any socio-economic political problem into a legal proposition, then you have the answer. So that is what a lawyer does. Lawyer converts any socio-economic political problem into a legal proposition, and then everything revolves around that. Look, if you look at the journey of a lawyer, you need good oration, you need to read a lot, to skim through, to find out what is substantial and what is not substantial, then to convince the other side, and then to think through and give a solution to the problem. So all these qualities which a good lawyer possesses invariably helps in politics, because in politics what you are actually doing is you're solving countrymen's problem, whether it is COVID-19, whether it is lockdown or no lockdown, whether you should have done Lokpal or no done Lokpal, whether you should bring RTI into picture or not, whether it's Narega. So by converting all problems into legal propositions which take the form of a bill and which eventually lands to you as a general public as an act. So that is what is the journey. So that is why a good lawyer turns out to be a good politician.
No, adding just
Okay.
one point, I think I had the similar points as Gagan has just said. Just adding one more point is a common touch. Being a lawyer and a politician, I meet people from all walks of life. Farmers are my clients, and also I interact farmers on a regular basis on my political tours and whenever I'm visiting. So the lawyer has that public outfit, has a public face. I mean, he is relaxed when he's meeting different set of people, and so is it true for a politician. Then, speaking abilities. Obviously, any politician has to be a good communicator. He has to win over the people, and so is it for a lawyer. If I am in a court, I have to convince judges, I have to convince my client, I have to convince my opponent counsel. So I have to be a good orator, and so is the politician. And then in politics, like what I am doing on committee, I am deliberating on laws. I'm deliberating on the policies. So for me, being on the committee and being a lawyer, it's far easier because day in, day out, we are decoding and we are analyzing different set of laws for our clients. And on the committee, I'm deliberating on a lot of legal issues, whether those set of laws are tenable, whether those set of laws conforms to the bigger
Got it.
picture.
That brings me to my next question. Uh, you know, taking a step back, if let's say there's a lawyer or even a law student who's interested in politics, how do they get started? How did you get started?
Well, I joined the youth organization of the political party, and I was quite active in my college. I was into the debating. I was quite active when it comes to social issues in my college. I used to raise my voice, and I was very vocal then, and I'm vocal now also. Then, for all the students, if they are interested in joining party, they should aspire the membership of. I'm not saying which political party. I want to keep it apolitical this debate right now. So whichever party they think, they should read their ideology. If they think the Bharatiya Janata Party is the party that they should go show up for, they should go for that. If they think the ideology of Indian National Congress is what is their ideology and they want to go ahead with that, they should go and join the youth wing of that party, or for that matter, any other political party. So first and foremost, they have to aspire a membership of political party and contribute, into the various programs these political parties, the youth wing or the student wing of different political parties do. So that is how they can start.
Yeah, Ramanujam, taking
Yeah.
it forward from what VP was telling about that how one can join actually politics. So there is no fixed strategy or fixed path for doing it actually. So you should be seen as somebody who is a problem solver. If you can give solution to problem, whether in your neighborhood, whether where in your college, whether in your university where you're studying, that is the single most important criteria for you to be seen as the future leader. Because what others are looking at is that, oh, whether this person has the capability to take decision on behalf of all of us or not, whether he can get re-evaluation of answer scripts done from the university or not. So as VP was talking about the student wing, actually that is the platform where one starts the political journey, because that is one safe zone, because you are addressing issues which are very confined, which confined to the students only. So it has not larger ramifications. So that is a safe zone for anybody to actually venture out for politics. And as you are looking for options in the political parties, so are the political parties. The political parties in these times are not attracting the kind of talent which they should be attracting. So they are also they are in hunt for the talent. And if you are perceived as somebody who has talent, who has knack of things, who can lead, who can cut across the masses, who can project himself and take care of the decisions on behalf of others, then yes, you are the person which the political party is looking at.
Okay, very interesting you say that, because there's a huge perception amongst people is that politics has become something which is like a family, passed down through families, and it is not only one or two parties. You see across parties. If you look at members of parliaments, for example, or ministers from any government, there are so many of them whose parents or family members have also been politics and they are here, and it is happening, right? So the question is that when you talk about talent and meritocracy, how does it actually work? Now, obviously there is a bit of nepotism also, like anything else in India, the movie industry, the judiciary, the legal system, lawyers, right? Everywhere we know it's very much there, and but people's perception is that in politics this is at extreme level. So what do you think about that? Like, where
But
does the
Ranu,
meritocracy?
what I think you're right, but nepotism is an exception, but it's not a general rule. If you look at our Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, he comes from a very humble background. He used to sell teas on the, on the railway station. So he has risen to the all the levels, and he has become now he's a prime minister. Look at our home minister and other. There are a lot of examples. I mean, I don't want to name them from this particular party or that particular party. Obviously, exceptions are there. There are families who are, it has more or less a business for a lot of families to have their kids and their sisters, brothers. They're all coming in politics. But then it is just an exception. The general rule is there are a lot of good talents who are coming now. A lot of youngsters in the current Lok Sabha, in the 17th Lok Sabha, you see a lot of youngsters who doesn't have any godfather or who don't have any, don't come from any big political families. They are contesting and they are now being elected. So family and all that is an exception. It is there in every field, whether it is politics or, as you said, Bollywood, or you say any other field.
Sure. So, what are your thoughts about lawyers choosing sides? Because a lot of lawyers are. This is a little off syllabus question, but lawyers are sometimes apprehensive of choosing sides because that might affect their career. Because if you are seen as too close to one political party, then people from the other spectrum may not give you cases, or you might be seen as too one-sided, etc. And is there complications involved there?
As I told you, for me, politics is never a career. I'm here in politics not to make money. So if I'm in one particular party and that particular party gives me matter, another party comes in power, and that really doesn't work like that with me. Politics for me is a mission. I'm here on a mission. that how can I contribute myself and my abilities, my knowledge for improvement of the people of this country.
No, I
and
understand that. I understand that, but that is your personal perspective. But there would be other people who would consider this as an important question, because for them, maybe they are just setting up their practice.
For them, I have one piece of advice: be on one boat. Don't be in two boats, because there's a fear of you being drowned. It's better one should be in one boat.
Gagan, what do you say?
Yeah, Ramanujam, connecting to the previous question that politics has become personal fiefdom. Actually, unfortunately, that is yes. And fortunately, it should not be seen as a problem, or it should not be seen as something bad about it. As you expect doctor's son to be a doctor, lawyer's son to be a lawyer, so there is no harm that if a politician's son or daughter becomes a politician. That's a natural flow, I would say. And I see it as a oligopoly, because you have a difficult entry to the politics and you have a difficult exit also. So both the things hold true in case of politics as well. So once you have entered, you have actually crossed a threshold velocity to enter or to reach certain level in politics. And one would not like that level to be given to an outsider, I would say. So if that son or daughter is able to deliver to people, I'm not saying at the cost of delivery to people, you just keep electing whether he is a son of a politician or daughter of a politician. Yes, the prerequisite is that he or she should deliver. And then again, I say that there are enough checks and balances which will take care of that fact, because we have seen that despite son and daughter of being a very heavyweight politicians, they fail miserably when it comes to electoral politics. The reason is simple, that you have to have a connect, you have to get things delivered on the ground. Now, coming to your second question, which was that whether lawyers should be taking sides, as VP was saying that you have to, because there are different ideologies which are floating around in the cosmos. So as a lawyer also, they are looking for law officers who can plead their ideology, who can advance their cause. So then obviously you have to align with certain ideology and move ahead. Because if you think that I can appease all the ideologies, then you are mistaken.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So basically the idea is that if there's a certain ideology which appeals to you, then you need to side with that rather than trying to appear neutral, which probably doesn't help that much, is the idea, right?
Yes, because in that case, the ideology or the political party who's looking for law officers to advance the cause, then they will not be inclined to appoint you as their law officers, because then they see they will be apprehended that you may choose that you may switch sides. So one has to align to a particular ideology or particular political party in order to advance their cause of action.
Got it. So I think that's an important way to look at it. That brings me to the other, obviously many people I'm sure is waiting for this question, that, we know that lawyers are appointed, into important positions by the government, and it's very often these are political appointments, even in important committees, important law officer positions, that starting from the attorney general, solicitor general positions to even at a public prosecutor level also sometimes. Although now public prosecutor, you have, exams and stuff, certain people are selected through a process like that. At the same time, there are additional public prosecutors or special public prosecutors are appointed, are very often political appointees. So how does this system work? If you and VP could both explain this.
I think, go ahead, Gagan, you want to address?
I think that it should be apolitical in nature, but unfortunately or fortunately, we have not arrived at that stage that where the appointments have become apolitical in nature. Like in the case of executive, in case of bureaucracy, you have transfers, you have shuffling, as there is change in guard in the at the center. So similarly, you find change in guard in terms of law officers also. That is to do actually with the comfort of working with those officers. And I would say that whosoever comes, the case actually will be dealt by the facts of that case. So it is immaterial whether a particular law officer belongs to particular political party or not. But then, yes, that's unfortunately or fortunately, the state of affairs is like that, as in the case of bureaucracy. Now, tomorrow you may say that why we have that, because yes, there are you have this system, you have created it over the 70 years. So now, if you want to get away with it, it's very difficult.
Not only that, it seems that over time we are getting, it's getting more politicized, in fact, more and more partisan. It has happened in USA also. Like you can see even the Supreme Court judges appointment in USA are completely political and blatantly political. Everybody knows, and it's like debated in that nature, right?
This will take the discussion to the NGAC, and I would say that's the opportunity which India lost. That will open up the new question for you, Ramanujam. Maybe perhaps the next question we can deal with, because I see NGAC as the best legislation for the appointment of judges, and that's the golden opportunity which came India's way, where opposition was on board, where government was on board, where you had representation from judiciary, so which had color of everybody for the appointment, so which would have taken care of the will of the people as well, rather than giving it entirely to judiciary.
Right.
No, I think addressing to Ramanuj your question about the appointment of law officer, I agree with what Gagan has just narrated. But on the flip side, what is the Union of India in case of the center? What is the state of Rajasthan or UP in a court? They are parties, right? And parties, like you are a party in a court, so you have a free choice to choose any lawyer you want to represent. So this could be an argument that yes, for within a court, a Union of India or a state, different states are a party, and parties are free to choose whichever lawyer or whichever advocate they want to go and argue on their behalf. But yes, I also agree that there should be some mechanism wherein the merit can also be involved, and there could be some examination, as you said, for public prosecutor. Yes, there is an examination, but there is no examination, fortunately, for the post of Attorney General, Advocate General, because they're considerably very senior positions. You can't have a examination, and you can't make the senior lawyers and sit and give exams. I mean, we cannot imagine Venugopal Saab and Kapil Sibal and other people sitting and giving exam for a Attorney General. No, because they are a celebrated
No, I did not suggest that there should be an exam by, that was not the suggestion. I was just saying that some government appointee lawyers are come through exam, but mostly not, is what I was trying to say.
Yes. But basically, it's on the free will of the party. Like in this case, the Union of India, they are free will to appoint any person they think that they will take the cause ahead and they will get them justice. So it is as simple as that.
Ramanujam, it's actually what VP was saying, that it's actually choosing your pleader. So as a client, you are free to choose anybody as a pleader. So similarly, political parties are free to choose anybody as their pleader.
Yeah, that is not in question. That was not the...
And actually by default, that will have the color of politics. Because your client is a politician.
Yeah, of course.
So you will, by default, you're going to have a color of political overtones to the pleader as well.
Correct, absolutely. So that brings me to my follow-up question that, what is the journey like from joining politics as a student politician or joining the bar politics from there to, getting appointed to important legal positions or panels or committees? What is the journey like? So what are the steps involved here?
Well, for me, it's been a learning experience. Every day I would say that it's a learning experience, and I feel myself very fortunate that at this age, I am getting all these challenges in life, and I take them as challenges, because whenever I'm on the committee, I am dealing with policy issues. Obviously from my committee, things go to the cabinet, from the cabinet goes to the parliament. So I am at the first place. I am on the first step of the laws are being made. This is with respect to the committees I am on. So yes, it is one, it is very challenging. Two, it's a good learning experience. And three, yes, it is, the kind of, my profession, my legal profession, it really complements with that. I mean, it is nothing that I'm doing totally different or opposite in my life. It is something which is in continuity. I mean, my legal knowledge comes very handy while I'm on the committee. I'm giving suggestions to the government, or I'm speaking on some policy issue in the committee. So my legal knowledge is always very helpful and very insightful and good for the while I'm deliberating on issues.
Got it. But if you can explain, like, what is it that lawyers, when they join politics, what are they expected to do? What is the kind of how do they? What is the involvement? What does the party expect from you as a lawyer? How do you support the party? What do you exactly?
So being a lawyer, say, within a political party, there are a lot of roles. A lot of roles a lawyer can be asked to do, from drafting of manifesto, then defending the political parties in a lot of cases. One of the very common cases that comes is defamation. Obviously, if one political leader of one political party gives any defamatory statements, whether he intends something else and he says something else, and obviously the other person takes him to the court. So we have to defend a lot of defamation cases. So a lawyer is all rounder. I think he can, whatever challenges comes to lawyer, he can execute it very well, from drafting to drafting policies for the party, or doing a research for the party, connecting with people. Obviously, because being in law, a practicer, we meet with a lot of people. We meet with people with all walks of life. So we can be asked to do any sort of duty from the party.
Right. And also, I'm guessing, like, during elections, you might be making representation to the election commission and stuff like that. I'm guessing those
That's right.
things.
Obviously, and you go to election commission, you're making a lot of complaints or representations, and even filing nomination. There's a whole legal process to it. So if you're a lawyer, your the PR Act, the People's Representative Act, comes into being, and if you're aware of that, so it's very handy. So being a lawyer, you are aware of the laws.
Right.
And
Gagan, you want to add anything?
a lot of
Sure, maybe.
lot of candidates have a lot of issues while filling their nominations, and most of their nominations get rejected because of some error here and there. So it is the job of a good lawyer to see whether those formalities are being dealt in the fashion it has to. So every political party do require, or any political candidate, whether it's from a political party or is an independent candidate, requires a lawyer for the filing process.
Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ramanujam, I have actually the second-hand experience of a lawyer taking charge of things or political affairs in any political party. So, unlike VP, since he's in the committee, a lot of committees. So, what I see lawyers doing actually, they are the mouthpiece of political parties. You'll find a lot of spokesperson, they are lawyers. They are defending the position in the media of various political parties. Then they are actually involved in the, as VP was saying, drafting of manifesto. Then the important area is defending the cases against various elected representatives of that political party, or even against that per se as a political party. Then you have issues. There are issues which are picked up from various constituencies. So if you have a good researcher or good legal mind behind every elected representative, I think a lot of things will improve in that particular constituency. So lawyers are actually searching for the issues which are affecting the public, which are affecting the masses, and then how to address them legally, that how I can bring them to a logical conclusion. So that is what I see a lot of lawyers, they are jostling around with that, with respect to that aspect. And then once you are in the government, actually your job actually becomes totally different. You are advancing the policies of the government, you are advocating the policies or the legal framework which the government decides for the countrymen. So that is what I see, that being a lawyer, your job is actually multifold. You're shuffling from court to parliament to the media houses.
Okay. Uh, there most of the parties have legal cells, right?
Yes, yes.
So how do these legal cells function, and how do people join these legal cells, and what is the process?
uh, you have eminent lawyer in that particular state being appointed as the head of that particular legal cell, which happens in actually at the state level. And if you look at the center level, then you have legal cell which caters to the entire country. And then you have different advocates who actually are aligned to that particular political party. Then you then you conduct various seminars, you advance, you tell them that what your political party believes in, that what is the road ahead for them when they are actually when they come to power, that this is what the agenda is. So a lot of political parties, the legal cells, what they do actually is they find issues like how much money has been spent on so and so project, who is the contractor who has been awarded that particular project. So they find out all these details and put it in the public domain so that public can know. Otherwise, they're not able to know that this project was allotted for so and so amount, and now this amount is revised to XYZ. And this is the contractor who has been awarded for last 15-20 years. So they can see that it will help them gauge the transparency in the award of projects, or transparency in the appointment of various law officers, as we were discussing, that okay, then the people in these legal cells actually turn to be future law officers once the political party whom they're affiliated with is voted to power. So that is how the dynamics of legal cell actually takes shape in any political party. I think BP will be able to tell us much
Yes,
deep insight.
a lot of political parties do visit a lot of colleges, law colleges, and obviously they are in touch with lawyers, to include them, good lawyers, especially good lawyers, to have them as the members within the legal cell. And obviously, depending on a lot of programs, as Dagan said, that legal cell, or for that matter, other cells within a political party, they keep on a regular basis, keep on having a lot of programs and a lot of engagement programs. So if I talk about BJP, they have their Adhivakta Parishad, and so as the Indian National Congress, they have the legal cell within the Indian National Congress, and on the youth level, they also have legal cells. So they approach colleges, law colleges, they approach advocates, they offer them memberships, they become member, and based on their performance, their activity, and their commitment towards the political party, obviously, then they rise to various positions. But obviously, as Gagan said, the head of a legal cell is a senior person within the area, and obviously, he's most relied by the party, so that in case of legal needs, he's there to address those legal issues which the political party has. I'm sorry, within the district level, or within the state level, or at the central level.
What is the difference between, another out of syllabus question, what is the difference between lawyers who succeed in politics, and there are others who really don't succeed, but maybe have really tried or have been part of things? Depends on how you define success, of course. For many people, like BP says, that it's just to be part of a mission and contribute to it and nothing more. But if you define success as rising through the ranks of the political party, which lawyers succeed and who don't, and what is the difference between them?
I would say both law and politics, they are out of syllabus. So if this question is also out of syllabus, I have no second thoughts about it. But if you look at the history, if you look at right from the freedom movement, they were right from Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, Motilal Nehru, Sardar Patel, they were all lawyers. Now, if obviously one has to be PM, the other one has to be another minister. So then you can't say that the other minister has failed and the person who has been appointed as PM has succeeded. So that would be very narrow definition of success, I would say. But yes,
I'm not saying that, but there are, of course, many people drop out of politics within a few years, or they are not able to stay, even manage to stay in politics for much long. Or there are people who have worked at, which I don't think is a failure, like I said with my initial, clarification, that somebody may have been working has been a member of a party for a long time and has been helping wherever needed, but really have not held offices or gotten deeper into the politics or in the higher echelons, has not worked there. And this happens, right? So what is the difference?
Ramanuj, I think I know what you're saying. What I think is destiny has a role to play in any field, whether it's politics, law. There are lawyers who get a lot of big challenges in life, a lot of big cases, and obviously there are other lawyers who are far better than those lawyers who have got those challenges. Obviously, they get never such cases in life, and so is true for the politics. There are workers who are very hardworking. They work day and night for the political party, but they never see the light of the day. They never become MP, MLA. But that's destiny.
this reminds me of a famous saying by Sachin Tendulkar once when he was asked that what is the secret behind your success. So he said that you take care of runs and runs will take care of dollars. Right. So if you take care of service, the service is going to take care of what you want to be in politics as well as in law. So as VP was saying, it's actually most of the things are sometimes circumstantial also. Somebody may
What
land
I
up with.
believe, like Gagan has just quoted, Tandulkar. I think he also once said that if you have to be achiever, you have to be a believer. You have to believe in yourself.
Right, right, absolutely. And actually, that is the theory behind the concept of fooled by randomness.
हिंदी में sorry गगन, I'm interjecting you when I'll forget. अगर आपको सृष्टि चेंज करनी है तो आपको दृष्टि चेंज करनी पड़ेगी. So it's very important. One, you have to believe yourself. Then ultimately you land being. Now again, you said success has a different definitions, and you land becoming. If I talk about political party, you become MP or MLA. That's a different thing. But at least it's important you believe in yourself and do your best. God will do the rest, and that is a mantra which is for every field. But the proposition is you have to do your best first, and then God will do the rest. It won't be the other way. God will do everything, and you don't do anything. You have to do your best. Only then God will take care of it.
Sure, I understand. But let me try to rephrase this question a little. So let's say when we think of, how to be a successful lawyer, we, of course, given all the uncertainties and everything, we know there are certain things, qualities people try to develop. So for example, you have to start, be a good researcher. You have to have good drafting skills. When you are you have to start reading the judge well, understanding how to interact with the judge. You cannot take the same line of argument maybe before two different judges who think a little differently or interact with lawyers in a different way. So we know, once you start practicing or you get mentorship, you start learning this thing that, okay, if I have to succeed, these are a few things, qualities I need to develop, or these are a few good practices I need to follow. Is there something like that for politics?
You have stated everything, Ramanujam.
Yes.
But missed one thing. That one thing is that
sure,
you have to like that case. That what you have stated is a prerequisite. But on the top of it, if you do not like it, then everything will fall. So that is what you are saying were all ingredients. So if I am interested in a problem solving, then definitely I will be successful. Similarly, if I am interested in service, then definitely I will, as VP was saying, I will be one day see the light of the day. So then that has to be there.
See, I am a little skeptical about this. I'll tell you why. Because it's not. See, people who are setting up an NGO is also doing a service, right? We can't say that it's quite the same. It's like being in politics is not the same as working on an NGO or doing pro bono cases. That is also service, right? You're running a legal aid clinic, which is also a service. What's the difference in politics? I'm sure we are missing something.
Yes, definitely. You have hit the nail on the head. The difference is actually in politics, you are not only interested in service, but you want actually that your political party should be voted to power. That is the undercurrent. That is not the case in the case of an NGO. That is not there in the case of a pro bono case. So, and if I have a political party and that political party never comes to power, I am no good as a political worker for that political party. So it's as simple as that. The agenda is very clear that that political party wants to come to power with certain things in mind. They want to do X, Y, Z, A, B, C things, which is not there in an NGO. NGO, you have an agenda, but then you don't want to come to power. No NGO will tell you that vote us and we want to come to power. Sorry, no pro bono case will tell you. They are limited to that cause of action. The NGO is limited to that cause of action. They have nothing to do with the governance. Whereas when it comes to politics, it is all about governance. So until and unless I become part of governance, I am no good a political party.
So the idea is that you are not only servicing people, but you are furthering an ideology or an agenda or a governance cause.
Yes.
Right? So you're furthering a policy. So
yes. That is precisely what I told you, that how a person joins a political party. He goes through the entire, the manuscript of a political party. What are the thoughts of the political party? That is what you call the agenda. What is the agenda of a political party? Aam Aadmi has a different set of agenda. BJP has a different set of agenda. Obviously, their approach, that they're reaching right to the place that it should be good for the country. But the ideology is different. The leftists have a different ideology. So one has to choose what one is really inclined to, which ideology is similar to the political party which he or she is ultimately going to join, and then work for that party. Now, coming to your question, obviously, without a political party coming to power and you being in power, you won't be able to do much for the people. Politics is for the larger good. Running a law clinic, legal aid clinic, running an NGO, fine. You're doing work in an arena. But being in politics, you have a larger role. You have a larger area to look after. You have a larger power to deal with things. And how that is possible? In a democracy, obviously, we have a a political party system. Obviously, a political party is chosen, and obviously that comes to power. So for that to happen, as Gagan said, obviously, we have to join a party, and that party has to come to power for that. So you are also in power and do good to others. So if you choose a party that never comes to power, or that never contests for that matter, then what is the use? I mean, you won't be able to contribute to a scale that you really want to do.
Understood. So it's basically, apart from the service angle, there is also the whole aspect of navigating power. And I'm sure there is a aspect of balancing interests, because when you are a politician, there would be different people with different interests. And, the situation is that there's a very good example that is given that, for example, you want to protect the environment. So when you say, let's protect the environment, nobody says no. Everybody says, yes, we should protect the environment. But then you say that, okay, we cannot cut the trees over here. Then somebody has a problem. That, the person who would have got a job if the tree was cut, he has a problem. Somebody wants to sell the wood, he has a problem. The person who has the land, he wants it cleared, he has a problem. So there are competing interests all the time in politics. Do you think being able to navigate that is also a very important aspect of a politician? Or, what do you think about that aspect? And also, before you answer that, I want to invite questions. There are those of you who are still here. Any questions, please post them in the chat. Okay, and we are almost at the end of our session. So do share your questions in the chat. I will present them to the speakers. That is one question I have. The other question I definitely want to know from you is that, can you share some moments of memorable moments, one or two, from your journey as a lawyer and politician at the same time? And Gagan also brushes with politics, if you can share something.
Gagan, you want to start, or I should?
Yeah, I would not, as VP may have experienced it by sitting in the committee. So I have an outside view, and what I have experienced is maybe few election campaigns, how the issues are framed, and then addressing local issues in the neighborhood or maybe in the faculty. So one incident which comes to my mind is actually, it was with respect to the elections. Probably I'm talking about 2014 elections, and there were issues which were being discussed, that which issues should come up, and there were actually Delhi was also going to polls at that time. So it was with respect to Delhi elections. I'm not talking about center elections. And the media panel, I will not name the political party here, was thinking about that which issues should be taken up so that they get projected and the people actually vote for those issues.
The selection of issues is a critical part of
Exactly.
electioneering process.
Exactly. That is the that is good. That is when you have when you are on the verge of drafting the manifesto. Okay, I will go with this manifesto before public. So there was a campaign which was being carried out, marketing campaign, to know the pulse, and the for topmost issue which came in the everybody's questionnaire was that the electricity bills, they should be reduced. That is why you see the Aam Aadmi Party harping upon that free electricity and free water. So because that was the outcome of that campaign, and everybody was actually burdened by the huge electricity bills which they were getting. So that was the first-hand experience which I got, that okay, this can have an impact to such an extent. So that is what I can recall from my journey or from my stint with the politics.
VP?
The biggest challenge that I face day in, day out is that it's very difficult to make everyone happy. You have to make few sad faces and few happy faces. And I'm mostly guided by Shakespeare's philosophy. To do a great right, you may have to do here and there little wrong, but again, that right should be greater. It should be for the greater good. So in being in politics, obviously small requests here and there coming on a daily basis, and this is one thankless job, to be very honest. People will seldom thank you that okay, my work was done, but if God forbid the work is not done, they'll ring you 10 times a day, and they'll even curse you कि भैया आपने मेरा काम नहीं करवाया. So obviously, in being in public life and in politics, you need to know how to balance this out. So one thing you should make it very clear: you can't make everyone happy. So you have to make that balance in your life, that okay, if I am able to deliver to these people, that's fine. And don't get frustrated if people say a lot of things to you, that mera ye kaam nahi karwaya, and I was this problem, I came to you and this and that. So yeah, this is a difficulty being in public.
Got it. Okay, so let's take some quick questions.
Just one more thing which reminds me of the fact that politics is about numbers, whereas law is not about numbers. I give you an example. You have, let's say, a religious structure which is built over public land. Here, majority would not like that religious structure is removed, whereas your law says that it should not be there in the first instance. So that is when you are actually in a catch-22 situation. Here you are actually integrating law with politics to get the desired objective, which you may not do only by exercising political will, because your political will never allow you to do that. And if you purely go by your legal instinct, yes, it should not be in the first instance. Then actually you have to find the right fusion to arrive at a solution, which we witnessed in the case of a mosque in South, which was being ordered to be demolished.
Right.
So these are sometimes, as VP was saying, these are sometimes difficult situations, and one has to actually weigh that which side to be taken.
Right. So there's a question. Let's take some quick questions. Abhishek Sharma is asking, I have seen that politicians want before election that we need to visit every voter for votes, but they fail to reach after the election is over, then solve the problem that people had. So Anything you want
Well,
to say
that is
about
a
that?
very common question that comes, and this is what you call a disconnect from your constituents, disconnect from your voters, and obviously you will get rewarded in the next elections by being defeated. So obviously, and it's actually a very difficult process, obviously by being elected. And if it's a bigger constituency, like in Delhi, we don't have bigger constituencies, northeast, south, southeast, and others. They're not very. Chandni Chowk is the biggest of all. So for a local MP can visit easily to various places, but day in day out, reaching to every voter is very difficult. So this is a common problem which voters have, that and for that reason, all these elected representatives have licensed officers in their offices. Let's suppose I represent South Delhi. So within South Delhi, I'll have an officer in place for Kalkaji. I'll have an officer in place for Sedula Jab and other areas. I'll have an officer place for Greater Kailash. I'll have an officer place for, let's say, other parts, so that I get feedback and the problems of the electorate of that region gets addressed. And for that matter, I think every MLA office or MP office, or for that matter, corporator's office, mostly they have those officers in place, to address those issues. And if there is some urgent issue, so that the corporator or an MLA or MP gets apprised of that issue,
Yeah, yeah, I understand.
and he can help and redress that the problem.
I understand, but at the same time, people still have a lot of complaints about it. So somewhere everything is not working. There's a question about politics and advocates being inseparable. Okay, so do you think that if you're a lawyer, you really can avoid politics, or are you like whether you overtly join a political party or not, you will have to deal with politics as a lawyer? Is this correct?
I think, as I just said in my address, that it's on one's own understanding and its own liking, whether I can devote my time more efficiently being in politics. So apart from law, I can devote time in politics if I have time left. Obviously, when politics requires more than 24 hours a day, if you get into an electoral process, so then you should forget about courts. You won't be able to go to courts because there are so many problems with your constituents that you have to deal in day in and day out basis. So I think, again, it's on one's liking, whether one wants to be in politics or not, and what is his thought process behind joining a political organization, or for that matter, what is he wants to contribute. Obviously, just because it's a very lucrative or there's a power involved, as Gagan said, it won't live very long. So it won't be of much use. So as I said, one should be clear enough that what is he looking into this profession for. As I said, for me, it's a thrill of solving problem, and it's always be there. And that's why I'm doing these two professions together.
Got it.
Why they are inseparable is actually the nature of the two, actually, that makes them inseparable. With the nature actually that governs both of them are problem solving. So you find this common between politics and law, and that makes it inseparable. And actually the fallout is a good law, a good policy, and at the end delivery to the people.
So there are a bunch of questions, but there's one more question from Ravneet. I'll just take this as the last question. I can't ask all the questions, sorry to those whose question I couldn't take, but good comments and good question, all of them. One question is about role of social media in electronic politics. Do you feel that social media has changed politics in any way, or is it business as usual?
Oh, it has
I
actually.
think it has.
Yeah, VP, go ahead, please.
It has. I mean, in a tremendous way, social media has totally changed the way the politics is used to be when I was young and I used to see my parents, and especially after this 2014, and even in before that also, with WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, and everyone has suddenly become so informative about who's doing what. And even those youngsters who don't have time to watch television, or go to the political party or functions and all stuff. So they can just go onto these Facebook pages and they can read or they can listen to the speeches and they can formulate an idea what sort of political party or what sort of a candidate he or she may be, and then take a decision as to vote him or vote him not. So obviously, the social media has totally changed the way the politics is being done. Now accountability has increased. Now, if something happens in one place, obviously that gets circulated so easily on social media. So everyone is so informed about what's happening in their vicinity or also in other places in the country, so that they can formulate an opinion, and when it comes to elections, they can take a very informed decision accordingly.
Yeah,
Understood.
Ramanujam, I would say it has changed for the good. And the reason is that before social media became active, you actually relied upon hearsay news. So news used to flow from somebody and it used to land up to you. Now everybody, every single person on this planet is a media channel. You just have to make video and make it viral, and it is for the everybody to see what is happening. So it has
But
brought.
is it always good because you have so much fake news and fake videos and
That is a
there's
challenge.
massive issue around
Correct.
Yeah,
I was
that
about to come on that. That'll be a challenge.
yeah, that has to be seen that it is not fake. But I am talking about the positive aspect of it. Earlier you used to spend, the political parties used to spend so much in publication, in advertisement, and here now you have it every minute, every hour something is coming out. So you have every small information which used to be confined to four corners are being made viral. So that is the advantage, is that you see how governance is changing, or how the people who are responsible for taking decisions on your behalf are reacting, how they are behaving. It is nothing remains a secret, which used to be earlier. Earlier you may get the information after 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, but now you have it at instant. So that is, I think, a very good change which is happening. And especially in the context of COVID-19, where social distancing is the norm, you will find a paradigm shift in how the politics is actually being done. And I hope that the political parties embrace this concept of digital marketing or social media to advance what they want to reach, how they want to reach out to the people. So I think COVID-19 will further push this social media to the next level, which we saw from the 2014 onwards.
All right. I think that brings us to the end of the session. We have shared a poll with everybody with some interesting results. So
Yeah.
I'll just share that with everybody. You can see you can see the poll. So do you think good lawyers make good politicians? 90% people agreed to that. 10% said no, they don't.
Can you share the poll result, the graph?
Yeah, how do I share it? I mean, it's already shared, I think.
I'm not able to see it actually.
Not able to see. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's there. It's no. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Okay. And then we asked a question, how many of you like to join politics? So 37 people, 61% said we want to join politics. And then there's a question on what is the reason for pendency of cases. In that, most people said, 64% said all of the people involved in the system are responsible, basically. I personally think that there should be another option called, infrastructure. I think the biggest problem is with infrastructure. That option is not here. I think people are trying hard to reduce pendency, but unless you have a system that supports that, it's going to be very difficult. We need more courtrooms.
Ramanuja, I think if you look at the budgetary outlay, and if any policy maker here, any people in the government is listening, and obviously I'll try and make this also heard, that only 0.4% is being
Exactly.
spent annually on the judiciary,
Exactly.
which is such a minuscule of the entire budgetary outlay that we have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if we won't spend and we won't make courts, so how will that be possible? And for 1 million population, we have just 10 judges.
Exactly. I think that is
And
the
way back in
problem
law
that is
commission,
that is the problem
that
that is
is
not reaching the people. People think that it's the judges who are delaying or lawyers who are doing something. But what
precisely.
choice do they have?
As now we are talking, there are about 3 crores cases pending before various courts in India. 60,000 cases are pending before the Honorable Supreme Court. 2.87 lakh cases are pending before the High Court and remaining before the subordinate courts. So, why? Because the kind of system we have. So the other day I was talking to Gagan that, the pleadings, when you file a case, obviously notices are issued. After that, there is a mechanical process where courtrooms are not required, judges are not required. You file a petition, then you have to file a counter, and after that there'll be a rejoinder, replication that can be done, and then once for the framing of issues, then only you go to the courts. So for those mechanical processes, courts are not required. That is one aspect. And second, obviously, we don't have judges. Only 10 judges for 1 million population. So that is very, very less, and that has to be increased.
Yeah, just to like give a comparison, US have around 100 judges per million population, and any of the developed countries have at least 50 plus judges per million
Yes.
population, and we have our sanctioned strength is around 16th, but most of them those like lot of vacancies which are not filled quickly, so that happens, and by the time vacancies are filled, more vacancies get created. So and the
Absolutely.
system isn't working. And I think there's also the issue that there is a conflict between states and center over, who's going to spend on renovating the judiciary and the infrastructure and all of that. So I think that's
Correct.
also an issue.
Correct.
Okay, so that's it. And then we had a few more questions on do you think lawyers should join politics? And we have 82% people said yes, which is very encouraging. Do you think there is a separation of powers? And 66% have said yes, 34% said no. How will you rate the discussion? 18% said excellent, 31% said very good, 36% said good, and 15% said it was average. Anyway, so thank you everybody who attended and stayed with us till the end, right? So thank you very much I must thank everybody for joining us and taking out your time, and especially to Gagan and VP for taking out your time on a Friday evening. This used to be the beginning of weekend once upon a time, but during COVID, we are pretty much all days seem to be the same. I don't know how it is for you guys.
But it was absolutely a pleasure to be on air with you and discussing law and politics. And it was, again, for me also, it was a great learning experience.
Yeah, I'm not the same person who entered in the session. So thanks, VP and Ramanujam, for turning around.
All right.
Thanks to the participants for participating in this discussion.
Thanks. Looking forward to more such discussions with all of you. All the best. Have a great day.